From New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US President Biden issues a one-word caution, don't, to Tehran as Israel prepared for a possible barrage, says expecting Iran to attack Israel sooner than later. As more and more conflicts emerging in West Asia, several countries including India issues travel advisory for Israel and Iran. Austrian Airlines suspends flights to Iran. US Vice President Kamala Harris blames Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump for the loss of abortion rights in Arizona 3 days after a court upheld a 160-year-old ban on the procedure. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. EAM Jaishankar reiterates India's firm stance against cross-border terrorism, says terrorists don't play by any rules. They should not feel safe if they are on the other side. Well, on to the details now. US President Joe Biden gave his stern message to Iran, which has threatened to take military action against Israel, is don't. Speaking to reporters at White House, Biden said his expectation was that an attack could come sooner rather than later. Biden also said his grim outlook was based on intelligence reports that he was not at liberty to describe further.
I want to get secure information, but my expectation sooner than later.
Mr. President, to Iran in this moment.
Don't. We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed.
And amid the ongoing tension in the Middle East, several countries, including France, Poland and Russia, have warned their citizens against travel to the region. Germany also warned its citizens to leave Iran, saying that there was a risk both of a sudden escalation in Tehran's existing tensions with Israel and that Germans might be at risk of arbitrary arrest in the country. Austria's foreign ministry followed Germany in urging its citizens to leave Iran in response to escalating tensions in the region. Austrian Airlines said it was suspending all flights from Vienna to Tehran until April 18th, while UK told its citizens to avoid all but essential travel to Israel and Palestine over the possibility of an attack on Israeli territory from Iran. On the other hand, India on Friday issued an advisory urging its citizens not to travel to Iran or Israel following a sharp rise in tensions between the two sides. Ministry of External Affairs in a statement said, in view of the prevailing situation in the region, all Indians are advised not to travel to Iran or Israel till further notice. The Indian Embassy in Israel also asked Indian nationals in the country to avoid unnecessary travel, remain calm and follow safely guidelines issued by the local authorities. Well, the first trucks carrying food aid entered Gaza through the newly opened northern crossing point. Israeli army released video of 8 trucks entering Gaza as Israel stepped up supplies following mounting pressure to ease the humanitarian crisis in the enclave. The military said the trucks which were bringing food into Gaza were inspected at the Kerem-Shalom crossing point on the border with Egypt before moving north to cross. And the Chinese and Japanese Coast Guard had an exchange near the territorial waters of the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Friday's face-off came after the leaders of the United States, Japan and the Philippines held talks at the White House on Thursday to reduce Beijing's pressure on Manila and Japan in South and East China Seas. This report provides in this context.
As if taking an affront to the trilateral summit between US, Japan and the Philippines that took place on Thursday, Chinese Coast Guard said on Friday that they had patrolled the territorial waters of Diaoyu Islands. These are the same disputed islands that Japan controls and calls the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea.
I would like to stress the following points. First, China has indisputable sovereignty over the islands in the South China Sea, including Renai Reef and their adjacent waters, and China also has indisputable sovereignty over the Diaoyu Islands and their affiliated islands. China's actions in the East and South China Seas are reasonable, lawful, and irreproachable in accordance with international law. Secondly, there has never been any problem with freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea.
Japan Coast Guard said in a separate statement that its patrol boats had asked 4 Chinese Coast Guard vessels to leave Japanese territorial waters. The Japanese said it was the 10th such instance by Chinese vessels this year. At a White House reception for Prime Minister Kishida earlier this week, US President Joe Biden had stated categorically the extent of the US commitment to Japan, mentioning Senkaku by name.
And through it all, our commitment to the defense of Japan under Article 5, including the Senkaku Islands, is unwavering.
The leaders of the United States, Japan and the Philippines held a summit at the White House on Thursday aimed at restricting Japan's stepped-up pressure on Manila in the disputed South China Sea.
It is a partnership born not out of convenience nor of expediency, but as a natural progression of a deepening relation and robust cooperation amongst our 3 countries.
China's increasing pressure in the South China Sea has escalated despite appeals by US President Biden to Chinese President Xi Jinping last year. Japan highlighted the shared values that the 3 democratic countries share.
Japan, the US, and the Philippines are maritime nations connected by the Pacific Ocean and are natural partners. We share fundamental values and principles and have supported regional economic development.
The Philippines and China had several maritime run-ins last month, including the use of water cannons and heated verbal exchanges. The dispute centers on the Second Thomas Shoal, home to some Filipino troops stationed there on a warship that Manila grounded in 1999 to reinforce its sovereignty claims. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, including the maritime economic zones of its neighbors. Let's understand the Senkaku Island dispute. In 1885, Japan confirmed Senkaku Islands uninhabited and unclaimed. In 1895, Senkaku Islands made part of Okinawa Prefecture. In 1920, China recognizes Senkaku Islands as part of Okinawa. In 1951, San Francisco Peace Treaty ensures Senkaku is part of Japan and the US exercises administrative rights over the islands. In 1969, a UN report indicates potential oil reserves in East China Sea. 1971, Taiwan and China officially assert territorial sovereignty. In 1992, China claims islands are in contiguous zone. In 2008, Chinese SOA that speed of advanced ships intrude into the territorial waters of Senkaku Islands. In 2010, Chinese fishing vessel collides with a Japan Coast Guard vessel. In 2012, more Chinese SOA intrusions into territorial waters. In 2013, China establishes East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone. In 2016, Chinese naval ships enter Senkaku Islands for the first time. In 2021, China enacts Coast Guard law inconsistent with international law. In 2023, 16 Chinese vessels tracked within territorial waters in 11 months. Despite China's claim, a 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration found that Beijing's claims have no legal basis. Bureau Report, DD India.
And moving on, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris on Friday blamed former President Donald Trump for the loss of abortion rights in Arizona in a visit to the southwestern U.S. state. Kamala Harris said a second Trump term would be even worse, as Trump would sign a national abortion ban if given the chance.
Now, because of Donald Trump, more than 20 states in our nation have bans. Now, because of Donald Trump, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age in our country live in a state that has a Trump abortion ban. And as much harm as he has already caused, a second Trump term would be even worse. Donald Trump's friends in the United States Congress are trying to pass a national ban. And understand, a national ban would outlaw abortion in every state, even states like New York and California.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron held a video call with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz from the Élysée Presidential Palace in Paris on Friday. The two leaders tackled the situation in Ukraine to follow on previous 8 conferences attended by the two countries in Paris and Berlin earlier this year. The call also comes as Macron and Scholz are set to participate in a European Union summit on the April 17th and 18th. And Chile prosecutor's office said the February kidnap and murder of a Venezuelan opposition figure in Chile was ordered from Venezuela and likely politically. It added that the government will seek to extradite 2 suspects who fled to Venezuela. Hector Barros, a lead prosecutor of Santiago's organized crime and homicide team, said a Venezuelan prison gang that has spread throughout Latin America was responsible for the murder. Chilean police have detained a 17-year-old Venezuelan for the crime. Chilean Interior Minister Carolina Toja said the suspects received the order to carry out this kidnapping. This most plausible hypothesis is that there was some political motive.
Organized crime is involved. They were the executors. The question is what their motive was. According to the investigation, the victim has no connection with the organized crime. There are no elements to consider, for example, a self-kidnapping or any hypothesis. This has led the prosecutor's office to think that the most plausible hypothesis is that it was a potential motive.
Well, the UK has appointed a woman as High Commissioner to India for the first time. Former intelligence chief Lindy Cameron will take up the role this month. DD India's Ollie Barrett reports for more from London.
On social media, Lindy Cameron said that she can't wait to get started and praised what she called the legacy of the man she replaces, Alex Ellis. He is being moved to another role in the UK's diplomatic service. The new High Commissioner will start this month, and she arrives as the UK and India continue to try and negotiate a free trade deal. Lindy Cameron comes from the intelligence sector most recently. She moves from a post as Chief Executive of the UK's National Cyber Security Centre. She's also held international development roles overseeing the Middle East and humanitarian issues as well. And between 2009 and 2010, she worked in Helmand in Afghanistan as part of a reconstruction team there. Before that, she'd also worked in Iraq, Vietnam, Nigeria and the Balkans in Europe. Alex Ellis welcomed Lindy Cameron on social media to what he calls a lovely job in a fascinating, vast and diverse country. Ollie Barrett in London reporting for DD India.
Well, a court in Ecuador ruled that the dramatic arrest of former Vice President George Glass last week was illegal, but he must remain in jail because of his previous convictions on Friday. Glass was convicted of corruption twice and is now facing new charges when he was arrested a week ago during a police raid on the Mexican embassy in Quito. Glass's defense team had argued that the 3-judge tribunal should declare his arrest at the embassy illegal and set him free. The team added that the Ecuadorian government had violated its human rights and international law by authorizing security forces to enter a diplomatic mission. Ecuador has argued that Mexico's decision to grant Glass asylum violates international law, which prohibits asylum for people facing criminal charges. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. One person killed and 7 others injured in a southern Turkish after a car's cabin collided with a broken pole. Emergency rescue units have evacuated 40 people from 7 cable car cabins, and efforts continue to evacuate 134 people stranded in other cabins, the governor's office said. Helicopters and other vehicles were dispatched to the scene for evacuation efforts from the cable car line. An 18-wheel truck with a loaded flatbed slammed in Texas, killing 1 person and injuring more than a dozen. The crash resulted in 13 injuries. The driver was in custody and described as a suspect. Parker was arrested at the scene by several officers who pulled him from the truck's cab. He was uninjured, officials reported. As Mexican band's music scales new heights globally, a festering dispute in the genre's traditional home turf pits frustrated hotel owners that play songs on the beach at all hours of the day and night. The dispute has played out in Mazatlan, where for years band's musicians have entertained tourists for tips, but lately hotels field a growing number of noise complaints from mostly older and foreign tourists. Every year, around 10 to 15 sea otter pups are found stranded off the California coast, often because of storms separating mother and pup. A non-profitable animal care organization, Monterey Bay Aquarium, introduces surrogate mother otters to the stranded pups in the hopes of returning them to the wild. As part of the program, the aquarium has successfully bonded the first surrogate mom and the pup. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Election fever grips India, campaigning in full swing across the country. First phase of polling on April 19th. And in IPL, Punjab Kings will lock horns with the Rajasthan Royals today in Mohali. We'll get you more on the match. And 13th April marks as one of the darkest chapters in India's struggle for independence. Today is 105th anniversary of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre.
World have lost such perfect weather days to extreme temperatures and extreme weather events. We are just always hopping from heat waves, droughts, forest fires, to floods, hailstorms and cyclones, and then the cold wave.
Here the root causes, we are forgetting that our vernacular traditions have been climate friendly. Climate change is a new thing. Yes. None of us have dealt with it before.
People are not aware of the risk. They are unwillingly exposed to high level of air pollution, heat, both outdoor, indoor. So the first step definitely is that creating awareness among them.
Millions of liters of water flow down the Rhine. That covers Mannheim's heating needs several times over, even at such cold temperatures.
Rivers are squeezed into ever higher and narrow banks to give space to houses, industries and agriculture. We need to reverse this approach.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar reiterated India's firm stance against cross-border terrorism. Interacting with youth at an event titled Why Bharat Matters, Opportunity for Youth and Participation in Global Scenario. Jaishankar said that the answer to terrorists cannot have any rules.
So, point is, something like Mumbai happens. And if you do not react to it, how can you prevent the next one from happening? And उनको ये नहीं लगना चाहिए कि भाई हम इस लाइन के उस पार हैं तो कोई हमें छुएगा नहीं. See, terrorists do not play by any rules. The answer to terrorists cannot have any rules.
Well, Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Kwatra on Friday concluded a two-day visit to Washington, D.C., United States. During his visit to Washington, D.C., Foreign Secretary Kwatra undertook a detailed review of the progress made towards further consolidating the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. Foreign Secretary had discussions with his counterparts at the State Department Deputy Secretary Richard Verma and Deputy Secretary Kurt Campbell, as well as other senior officials. He also held discussions with key counterpart officials at the National Security Council, Department of Defense. These discussions spanned the entire gamut of India-US ties, growing defense and commercial ties, supply chain resilience, and contemporary regional developments. Foreign Secretary also had meetings with representatives of leading think tanks and chambers of commerce. The visit is in keeping with the tradition of regular high-level exchanges between the two countries and provided an opportunity to further advance our growing and future-oriented partnership. And let's now get to the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. Well, election season is at its peak in India, with parties organizing multiple public meetings as the first phase of voting is slated for the 19th of this month. In order to garner support for the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, senior leader and Union Home Minister Amit Shah to hold multiple rallies in Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. Senior BJP leader and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will also hold rallies in Chhattisgarh's Dantewada and Kanker. And in order to woo the voters and garner support for their respective parties, political parties are holding public rallies and roadshows across the country. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi to hold rallies in Chhattisgarh's Bastar and Maharashtra's Sakoli. Meanwhile, Samajwadi Party's Supremo Akhilesh Yadav to hold rallies in Uttar Pradesh's Bijnor and Muzaffarnagar today. Well, Manipur, which has 2 lower house seats, is going to polls in the 2 phases on April 19th and 26th. Once a princely state, current-day Manipur shares a 400-kilometer long border with India's neighbor, Myanmar. Let us take a look at the stake.
Blessed with exotic locations, the northeast Indian state of Manipur can be geographically divided into 2 regions, the Imphal Valley and the surrounding hills. The state capital, Imphal, is located in the valley. Manipur also houses the world's only floating national park, Kebul Lamjao. Manipur's main ethnic groups are Meiteis, Kukis and Nagas. Once a princely state, current-day Manipur shares a 400 kilometers long border with India's neighbor, Myanmar. In early 2024, the central government announced that it will be erecting a fence along the entire 1,643 kilometers India-Myanmar border. The state's economy is mainly driven by agriculture. In the 2024 general elections, Manipur, which has 2 lower house seats, is going to polls in 2 phases on April 19th and 26th. The state has over 2 million voters, out of which 0.9 million are men, over 1 million are women, while nearly 239 belong to the third gender. Manipur is presently being governed by the Bharatiya Janata Party-led National Democratic Alliance. Other prominent parties in the fray are the Congress and the Kuki People's Alliance. In the 2019 general elections, the BJP and the Naga People's Front bagged 1 seat each. Despite having 2 seats, the polls are being closely monitored in Manipur, which was marred by ethnic unrest, though violence has reduced considerably in the recent times. Election Desk, TD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India celebrates 5th day of Navaratri. The temples recited prayers to goddess Durga, while a large number of devotees gather to offer prayers and take part in the morning prayer to commence the 5th day of the 9-day Hindu festival of Navaratri. Preparations are underway for Rukuna Rath Yatra of Lord Lingaraj in India's Bhubaneswar. While the artisans are busy giving final touches to the chariot of Lord Lingaraj, the work is believed to be completed soon. Rukuna Rath Yatra, the largest chariot-pulled festival in Bhubaneswar, which draws thousands of devotees every year. Wild elephant rescued from water-filled pit in India's Kerala. Heavy rain has battered the region in such a situation that the wild elephant fell into a pit due to waterlogging. The elephant was later rescued by the authorities. 13th April marks as one of the darkest chapters in India's struggle for independence. Today, it is 105th anniversary of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Here's a report.
Baisakhi is the agricultural festival of happiness and prosperity which is celebrated in Punjab every year on 13th of April. A cold-blooded genocide that led to the bloodiest Baisakhi ever took place on April 13, 1919. The tranquil city of Amritsar in Punjab witnessed a horrific event that shook the nation to its core. British colonial forces under the command of Brigadier General Dyer opened fire on thousands of unarmed Indian civilians gathered at the Jallianwala Bagh public garden. The crowd had gathered peacefully to protest against the arrest and deportation of two nationalist leaders and to demand freedom from British rule. What followed was a brutal onslaught that lasted for around 10 to 15 minutes. The firing was indiscriminate, leaving hundreds dead and thousands injured. Among the victims were women and children, their lives cut short in a tragic act of colonial oppression. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre was a turning point in India's struggle for independence. It ignited a firestorm of anger and resentment against British rule, uniting people from all walks of life in their quest for freedom. However, in April 2019, the then British Prime Minister Theresa May described the massacre as a shameful scar on British Indian history.
The tragedy of Jallianwala Bagh in 1919 is a shameful scar on British Indian history. As Her Majesty the Queen said before visiting Jallianwala Bagh in 1997, it is a distressing example of our past history with India. We deeply regret what happened and the suffering caused. I'm pleased that today the UK-India relationship is one of collaboration, partnership, prosperity and security. Indian diaspora make an enormous contribution to British society.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Jallianwala Bagh National Memorial at Amritsar in August 2021 and paid homage to the martyrs and survivors of the massacre, emphasizing the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy for future generations.
जलियांवाला बाग का ये नया स्वरूप देशवासियों को इस पवित्र स्थान के इतिहास के बारे में, इसके अतीत के बारे में बहुत कुछ जानने के लिए प्रेरित करेगा.
The memorial serves as a place of reflection and remembrance, ensuring that the memory to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre lives on as a symbol of India's struggle for freedom and justice. Kriti Vadhera for DD India.
And in sports, Punjab Kings will lock horns with Rajasthan Royals on Saturday in the match 77 of Indian Premier League 2024 in Mohali. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.